So we're going to start we wanted to share some of the research that we've been doing on all of the patents of the really sophisticated technology that's out there that a lot of people just aren't aware of and have absolutely no idea exists. And it was, a big eye opener. We've both been doing research on our end, and we found some really good resources. And so we're just looking to bring them forth and share. And we're just going to discuss casually because this is really kind of heavy topic in many ways for many people just coming into this information. And so we don't want to, be provoking any fear in anybody, but just understanding kind of what's out there, what's been out there for a really long time, and what more and more people are becoming aware of, so that we can kind of increase just, general collective awareness on everything that we're, that we're that we're up against and that we're constantly, having to engage with, probably since Atlantean times. So we were discussing how maybe some of this technology, goes all the way back to probably a lot of it goes back to Atlantis, and then it's kind of Atlantean technology rehashed in modern times, and how there's probably been a lot more development in it of it during these times, make it a little more sophisticated and then adapted to the needs of what the people using the technology are trying to do. So we're going to talk all the way from, we'll look at the list that we have, but it goes into the whole everything related to social media, smartphones, all the way up the ladder to really, really sophisticated technology that's used by three-letter institutions, three-letter agencies, for experiments and also for controlling, various people in the population or, groups of, people within certain geographical areas. So to start, I thought we'd just look over the frequency spectrum. And can you see this okay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah,
So
that's better.
yeah, so familiarizing, ourselves with what exactly the frequency spectrum is really helps to sort of grasp the information behind anything related to, do or other sophisticated technologies. You have to get kind of a basis, right? And so everything has a frequency, the heart rate is at 1 hertz. We could speak at planetary frequencies.
Mm.
And, anything within this spectrum here, going from 1 to 10 hertz, interferes with nerve signaling.
Mm.
And this is what we're picking up when we're looking at the Schumann resonance power grid. And we're talking about, the frequency of the earth, the frequency of the heart, the frequency of the brain. And so there's a lot of beautiful things when we're tapped into like the natural frequencies that are emanating out in the world from the planetary bodies or from nature itself.
Mm.
And so for those that, kind of took that information and then basically started building technologies using those frequencies, are able to interfere with a lot of this natural phenomenon that we're experiencing in the world, because it can affect brain waves, which affects brain states. If it affects the heart rate, it's affecting everything to do with our physiology. And so just giving people like a general idea, looking at this chart first, really helps to sort of lay it out and visualize it. Everything that we are hearing goes from 100 hertz, to somewhere over here. And so everything within this hertz range are things we can hear. And there's some people that can hear, a little more on each end. You can Like dogs, for example, animals or some humans can hear outside that range, but in general, most humans only hear within that range. So every sound we produce is within this range. And um, everything that we're interacting with auditorily here in this plane is within this range. And
So,
then sorry, go ahead.
yeah, so I guess, for example, the people who have been affected a lot by the power grids, electromagnetic sensitive people who hear, they get tinnitus when they live too close to the power lines. I believe my understanding is right. These people will fall into here at the audio frequency here, where they're able to perceive way more, therefore they're affected by it more.
Exactly. And I believe that when people do, activate different parts of their DNA or their biology, or just spend a lot of time meditating, or those are one of the walls, the initiations that we go through, is that we expand our, our capacity to take in more information in the world, including frequency. And so we end up sensitizing ourselves to things that are outside of the normal range of hearing or of seeing.
Makes
And
sense.
so that's why, for most people, just within this range, if nothing in particular is, they're not drinking green juices all day long and activating their field, they're not going to hear the power grid. They're not going to sense anything outside of that
Mhm.
or see anything outside of the optical frequency range. So this is where there's two parts of there's different groups, those that can and those that can't. And I think that's where a lot of the misunderstanding comes in, right? If you can't see it, you don't believe it. And so a lot of people that haven't experienced that expansion might not be able to really grasp, what that's about, and just sort of write it off as something that is, produced psychically in the person, having to do with, subjective stories or what have you.
Well, there's a chapter in the Invisible Rainbow that makes reference to exactly that, downplaying the people who have basically physical ailments caused by the changes in frequency. And what's that famous psychologist? Oh, his name is so it'll come to me. Yeah, he was actually the one, he was sort of like the pioneer of psychology, but at the same time, he was also the one who said that these people, because he himself did not perceive these frequencies, he downplayed these people as, that they have psychological issues, but just because you don't perceive it, we don't need to classify these people as something else than what they actually are. So he actually didn't do a he he didn't do a what is it, a positive thing for them. He actually, yeah, basically classified them a bit of a crazy people, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's
So
the red tape around science, right? Science works until it knows what it knows and it's able to, gain greater tools to investigate into any phenomenon or anything. They're limited, right, to what they have and what they're working with. And so whoever discovered that dogs can hear certain frequencies, I mean, it's kind of obvious. You blow the whistle, the dog's going to look around. But that, up until that point, until they were able to scientifically understand it, they probably just, didn't make any correlation,
Freud, of
right?
course,
Okay.
Sigmund
Yeah.
Freud. Yeah.
Um, so we have here going into, you know, you have the universal dimension, the wavelength, the radio band, right? We have all these different categories. And then you have the hertz frequency. So going into the megahertz, we're tapping into radio frequencies. So, if you're really expanded, if your field's really expanded, you might pick up on a song playing on the radio, without actually turning the radio on. And if you're tapping into mind, you're meditating, you're picking up on these things as well. That's why a lot of people get songs. They'll kind of have songs in their dreams, right? Songs will wake them up, or they're just like picking up on all this information. And then moving down, frequencies that are dangerous to life. We have over here, like really low hertz frequencies. And then we also have, moving into the gigahertz, where we have the microwave frequencies, which, by the way, cell phones run on microwave frequencies, as well as cell phone towers and all that. So it's not a far stretch. I know that a lot of people don't want to accept that cell phone towers can be harmful, but if you have really, low gigahertz, pushing through the atmosphere at a steady rate constantly, or you have holding a cell phone to your ear constantly, you're going to be receiving, a constant dose of microwave frequencies that is dangerous to, a cellular level. So it seems pretty obvious, we have the information, but because they meet standards in terms of, the tests that they did, basically, which are all funded by these companies. So it's that's kind of always the joke, is that the people that are producing the results are also the ones benefiting from those results. Determine that maybe the majority of people won't be affected in a short term, but over long term, most of these studies aren't done over generations, but over long term, we can see like a cellular transformation happening due to the introduction of these gigahertz in the atmosphere at a really high concentration, because there's cell phone towers everywhere now.
Mhm.
So we have to look at that really for what it is as well. And yes, we can adapt to a certain degree, but do we want to adapt? Because it is transforming us at a slow rate into something that is less and less, catered to the natural frequencies of the earth and the trees and the natural environment.
And I think there's
Go ahead.
uh yeah, I just want to mention that there's a huge focus on I guess because what because when you say dangerous to life at cellular level, we just hear it, it's a theory, but what does it mean in our daily life? And I find that today our health, we need to be looking at that, and there's a huge blind, sort of like the horse, the huge blind spot on, well, okay, if somebody fails, is sick of certain things, we're never even, this is not even mentioned, but it's there. So we're always just looking at microbes, viruses, like, we need to expand that awareness and see, okay, there's other things that could come and gnaw at your health. So whether it be emotional, we can throw that in just for fun. But here, this is a huge one. But no, it's never even once considered. So, well, maybe there are some people, but very few. So that's also a huge, okay, let's look at the broader scale of things that there's, it's affecting us, the human beings that walk the earth. So
Exactly. So I think, we do have more and more people just becoming educated, because it's all about education. So the more people understand like this chart in general and what these are, a lot of people just have this really elusive idea about what frequencies are. In mainstream, the people that have looked into it, well, you can learn about it and you start understanding things on a deeper level. So I agree. And then we come to we come into the infrareds, and then we have the light spectrum, uh, petahertz, which is everything that we can see. So the whole color spectrum falls into this small little space. So we can't see everything else on this hertz spectrum. We can't see, but is there, which is really fascinating, right? That we can only see this small little space And all the hertz within here produce all the colors and produce everything that we're able to capture. So it's really interesting to kind of, that's why our what we can access is so limited visually. And when people start expanding their fields, they start accessing more. And then I think that's when you have, people having these experiences, speaking of things that most people are just going to shake their heads and go, what is this person talking about? Because they're picking up in their visual fields things that most people aren't.
Mhm.
And then we get into, down here we get into really faster hertz frequencies. So the sine wave, how it moves like this, it's moving faster and faster. It starts off really slow and then it starts to speed up and it starts becoming really fast. Right around here. And then we have the radiation. We have the cosmic rays, the gamma rays. This is the frequency spectrum, basically for those that haven't looked into anything frequency, anything spectrum, and had no basis for putting any of this information like into a container. So we wanted to bring this forward first, just to give people a real clear kind of, idea of where things fall into in terms of the technology that is at the forefront, everything to do with radio, satellites, transmitters, microwave, all that stuff. Um, this is what we're aware of. And then I think we can look quickly at the frequency, brainwave, and brain state. So this is just basically going through, the delta, theta, alpha, beta, and gamma. This is what they look like. You have the gamma again, it's really fast, right? The delta is really slow. And then we have its association with the brain state. So we can come back to this. Some people are familiar with this because they've gone into using frequencies for meditation, for relaxation, to go into deep states of meditation or to do healing work within themselves. And alpha, when we're in a really active state and we're able to engage in the world, be very concentrated. We're looking at these two here. I just pulled this out quickly. This is the frequency bands that are used. So these are all the bands that are sold and purchased on the market. Some are sold on the black market. A lot of it is sold, just to cell phone towers, what different agencies, institutions can use, whether it be military or whether it be for communication, everything to do with, internet, cell phone, and then getting into the more sophisticated stuff. So these are auctioned. Often they're auctioned off, like let's say to a cell phone provider, and then whoever's is able to purchase that bandwidth, they kind of have control over those so that nothing can be scrambled. You can have the same, two different agencies using the same bandwidth. It's really specific. And so it's like people buying blocks or chunks of bandwidth. It's really interesting. And there's regulatory bodies in place that dictate, healthy versus unhealthy bandwidths. And so they're the ones gauging, and I should have pulled up that institution, but they're like a regulatory body that is supposed to be regulating this stuff. But again, a lot of what's deemed healthy, it doesn't necessarily have the proper research backing that decision. And a lot of people doing the research for for this regulatory body are paid for by the cell phone companies. And you can find all this information. You can find it out there. But yeah, this was another one that was just more visual, kind of showing people. We'll dive into the deep stuff, and maybe you can take it from here.
My daily life, my family, some people are like, well, this doesn't affect us. Well, if I can put it in this way, when you're talking about transmitters and cell towers, so we all know what they are, and they transmit, and then you need a receptor. And a receptor in this case, the most common example is the cell phone. So however, we as human being, we are an actual receptor. We are literally an antenna walking around constantly. So we are this receptor of all the other transmission that it's being emitted out. So the list of, now I just have the visual of that list of all the different bands that's being sold off. So to different companies, and you're like, wow. So if I'm this receptor, I could be anywhere around the world, and these things are still transmitting all the time. So there's no way that we're not affected by it. We are the cell phone. We are the human receptor. So that's a huge shift for me. And when I came to realize that, the same thing as, we are this beautiful antenna for nature receptor. So you can kind of choose to receive, well, you can choose, you can and cannot. You can choose to receive more the natural rhythm, or the Atlantian technology, so is which one do you want to tune in more, and which one is going to overpower? And I think in terms of sovereignty, in terms of who we are, this is a tipping point. What do you want to connect to, and which field is going to be stronger? Is the nature is going to have a stronger effect, so that you become this natural antenna of good vibes or good frequency, or the other frequency, the Atlantian frequency, which we don't know enough. Well, we're starting to, and which is what we're going to dig into. How is that going to affect us as humans?
Yes, I agree that there is a certain amount that we can do. But I would also, I think it's a little naive to think that everything is within our control, because when we start looking into the really deep Atlantean technology that's very powerful, it becomes a battle, it becomes a frequency war. And we'll go back to our screen, because now we're going to get into, more of the intense stuff. And so we can come back to what you're saying, and we can come back to how to strengthen our own fields, and how to prevent, a lot of the lesser technologies from disturbing us. And, and then we don't need to be in fear, but we need to understand that if this stuff keeps developing in the way that it is, it's a frequency war that is more powerful than any human bioenergetic field. So if you can take low decibel frequency, right? And we'll get into the chart, and you could read through it, and then we'll have this discussion again at the end. But you can take low decibel frequency, and you could put out fires with it, right? Fire is really powerful. It's an element. It's powerful. It does its own thing. But using a speaker, and vibrating at a specific rate, which is, I forget the exact, so between 30 and 60 hertz produces the desired extinguishing effect. Okay, so there's a lot more going on with frequency. And I mean, you can imagine how powerful a fire is. Fires are, it's just so powerful. And then, developing the speaker to put this out is just like, it's mind blowing. And this is kind of like a smaller example of when this technology is harnessed, how it could be used for good, right? We can start using this technology for amazing things across the planet. And I know that we're going to stay on the positive tip, and that's why we can talk about, building up our natural electromagnetic field through healthy living. But we're also going to dive into this chart right here, which is going to talk about how sometimes it's, it's being misused in the world and how powerful that is. If someone doesn't know that there's a bulldozer outside their house, right? Then they're not going to understand why they're feeling the way they are. They're going to start making up a story about what they're experiencing, right? If someone comes along and sees this guy holding the speaker aimed at a fire and the fire just goes out and he doesn't understand what this device is, he might come up with another story. When really, once you understand the science, okay, they're blasting a frequency between 30 and 60 hertz, and that frequency, basically nullifies the frequency of the fire. Right. So we'll keep on diving in. So now we'll dive into this. I'm going to just make this a little bigger, and maybe you can start running through this because I know that you found this. Can I hide this side? I'm wondering if I can hide this here on the side. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So
I'm not sure how. Okay. Well, I mean, I found it, but somebody else produced this. This is massive. Um, I guess when we look for information, we do find them. So here is basically a list of compulated existing true, and I looked some of them up. You can go to patent, US patent, and put in the number on the left-hand side, and you'll get all the details, the whole research of what it entails with graphs and how it affects the brain waves and so forth. And you can see what's really interesting is the filing date as well. That's pretty crazy. We're in 2024, and I think again a lot of people still don't know about it. And then I just came into this a couple of years ago. We have even the third row. We're talking about 1974. That's crazy. You see the third column, 3393279, and the filing date. Oh no, there's even older. So 1962 and 1974 by G.P. Flanagan, Robert GMA. Okay, it's just that mind-boggling for me to understand
how far back they go?
This was, yeah.
So what are they? What are they exactly?
Okay, so the third one is allows information to be remotely conveyed to subject via electronic magnetic waves. So subject here, we're obviously talking about human beings here. Apparatus and method remotely monitoring and altering target's brain waves, central nervous system. Just reading this, even without going into the detail of it, so they want to send information to your brain. And whatever that information can do. So I can even imagine this could be a thought, which then, we react.
Because we have the voice to skull up here, right? And that's running at 1 to 8 hertz. They put them in a different. So methods, a device for producing a desired brain state via magnetic waves. So there's a difference between the voice to skull and conveying to a subject information. Altering
but then at the same
waves.
Time they could be based on because the oldest one is the third row, right? So maybe they just base it on the previous technology and just amplified or further extended their study.
Yeah, exactly. So like this one I think is the most common that people experience on a day-to-day level, I mean, I think it's way more than we want to believe. Like once you start digging into this stuff, you're like, wow, do I even own my own thoughts, right? You really have to have strong boundaries and really be aware of your mind, right? And really do practices, daily practices that will increase your awareness of your own thoughts, right? Of what's coming in, as you said, as an antenna, as a receptor, for all these different frequency waves, because some of them come in the form of states, and certain just pulsations that will put you into a lethargic state, for example, or that will put you into a depressive state. And then others are coming in and actually like in different forms of information, maybe producing imagery, producing specific thoughts, producing specific feelings, because information conveyed remotely, information is like a vast, it's not just hearing things. But you're right, they probably developed this and then built the voice to skull, creating even more precision with the technology to transmit intelligible. So remotely transmits intelligible subject sound into target's consciousness. So intelligible subject sound is like something that you can auditorily hear as like a word versus it just being kind of like an influence of of a state. And the central nervous system, this is what I think a large part of the population is dealing with. And if we go into, where was it? Right here. So this is delta. This is the dreamless sleep, accessing the subconscious, loss of bodily awareness. So we're talking about the subconscious here. And, it's just affecting the nervous system. So that's everything to do with the physiology, the biology, the circadian rhythm, the heartbeat, all these things that make up our experience here. Because everything is controlled through the nervous system. Because there's just so much to take in at once, So if you're feeling like that, whoever's listening, just click out and then come back at a later time when you're ready to take in more information and learn more about this, bigger things happening in the world that might go straight up against, some of your belief systems. So we managed to pull the files that we're looking for. And within these programs that, the agencies have been working on for a really long time, mostly, coming out of World War II, we're looking at a lot of these programs have been running, and a lot of investment was made during that time to get these programs up and going. And, in terms of like addressing larger populations, we can look at the beta, the alpha, the theta, the delta, and the gamma related to what we're looking at here in terms of, where those frequencies ranges fall into. And I think we had, we're looking at 0.3 to 4 hertz. We're going into delta. We're looking at this one here. We're looking partially at this one, This one has a 4. So subliminal manipulation of subjective emotions via remotely directed audio waves, remote neurological control via sets of low frequency waves beamed at brain. So this has to be beamed directly at the person's brain. So we're looking, a lot of this is geared towards military. You can find people's stories, just where the programming, they go into the military, they just get programmed. That part of the brain is basically, it's like they become like sleeper cells. And then when they get activated, they sort of black out. and then this alter will take over, and they will, do different things in the world for different institutions and agencies. So this is like the heavier stuff that we can look at regarding this, but it exists nonetheless, and then the milder stuff, we're looking at beta, we're looking at base personality, um, stimulating the nervous system in terms of, sexual programming.
As far-fetched as it sounds, we're so used to watching movies that has all these possibilities, and people like, wow, they're marvel at it. It's like, wow, we can do all this in movies. So, but at the same time, why are we so shocked when it's actually here? And why is our brain not able to perceive these things? So, how to approach it, I think that's just a personal thing. I mean, I even tuned out myself when I was watching the videos of Synergy, CP Synergy. On Odyssey, I sent you one or two videos, and you were like, "Oh my gosh, she's talking exactly about." Yeah, her stuff was so heavy. I tuned out. I was like blown. So
She goes into the science of it, and it's difficult to follow. She really goes into the science of it and explains everything thoroughly. So it's a lot of information to take in all at once.
yeah.
I think the sexual programming goes really deep, and it goes also, like the alpha waves. We can look at what the alpha waves are here to get an idea of, so it's 8 to 13 hertz.
Oh, you're really looking at the frequency. Yeah. Some of them don't have it. Mind you, I could probably put in the patent number and find that information.
These could be playing out so many different ways. Sex in itself isn't bad. So it's looking at how it can be used against the population, how they can, use frequencies to alter people's brain states of their own sexuality. And then they can be taken advantage of from that place, on all these different levels. So this is, learning that these patents do exist and that this is what they're used for. These are the people that invented them. The year they were invented really starts to help people understand how this is playing out. Measures tissue damage of subject via remote application of electromagnetic waves. Measures tissue damage. Interesting. So yeah, there's so many good applications, right? That
and they've tested on page 2 towards the last, because I don't have there's no numbering, so it's very hard to tell you. On page 2, the second to last, it talks about intraoral electronic page 2 towards that one, intraoral electronic tracking device that can be implanted in teeth dentures, so I'm just looking at the year, 2000, 1999, 1998. So they've been researching this for a while, and now we know that there's intradermal, there's but yeah, as in a medical device, or you can say it's for a medical device and use it for other things. So it kind of goes both ways. To me, it just bring to awareness that it's been 20 something years, 25 years at least in the testing and now it's out here.
Yeah, that's it. That's why when people talk about nanotech, right, and they get like the big eyebrows, like people that they don't understand anything related to like the patents that are out there, stuff that's been used over the last so many decades. They think microchipping is still, fantasy. They don't understand, that the stuff has been developed, and if it is developed, it has been used. And especially, the general population, they're going to work, they're going to entertainment, they're they're
Mm.
not usually involved in, in things happening on these different levels of warfare
Mhm.
between countries, with economic warfare and the military, all that stuff going on. They have no clue, and I think in the US, there's a lot more. I don't know. I sometimes I feel like there's a lot more of it happening in the US than in Canada. But in all honesty, I really don't know. I just know that a
Yeah,
lot more testimonials are coming out of the US and a lot more information on these programs are coming out from the US.
I mean, the one real one that I know of is, the MK Ultra testing at the McGill University. That one is a known fact that it's in the news articles, but I read some of the news article. They really, really downplay the whole MK Ultra. A lot of the supposed, so they just kind of brush it off and try to make it as light as possible. But I think the terminology when it becomes mainstream, the MK Ultra, that will bring the other waves and oh, what is this? It's like I was surprised that my teacher, and PNL, NLP, she had no clue. I asked her, are you aware of MK Ultra? And she says no. I I thought she would have been, maybe some of her clients would come from that sphere, but I guess not.
Interesting, interesting. Yeah. It has been kept pretty hush hush, even though there's still an ongoing multi-generational lawsuit happening, um, class action lawsuit happening between these families. But I think the issue is a lot of the documents were burned.
Mm,
So the information that made it out to the public was just very basic, electroshock, virtual, having images projected at you, sounds.
mhm.
We didn't really get any of the information on the frequencies and the specifications of, what they were building regarding these patents. That was partly, what they were doing, and the public didn't receive any of those documents.
No, no.
So what made it out, and through every strata, through every outlet, the information gets filtered more and more for a public mind. Like they always say, the general public, you have to dumb things down like quite a bit. Um, which I find surprising. I mean, I know so many intelligent people, but I think you know, it gets dumbed down, not so much because people aren't intelligent, but because, they're not really able to take in that information all at once.
They're not ready
And
to
it can,
accept. Yeah.
yeah, it can be very disturbing for someone who's never come into any of this information to get hit with it. I remember when I was coming into a lot of this information, it was really painful, right? As a human, on a soul level, you're like, this is happening, this stuff is really, no, when you go like there's a few things that I really was really in denial about for, a certain amount of years. I was just like, had to constantly challenge myself to just, look at the information again. And I saw that whole process happening. I just did not want to believe
Yeah.
the information that I was encountering. And all of my friends were like, Jessica, it's so obvious. The evidence is there, the proof is there. And then one day I realized it's because it was too painful. And then I confronted that information and I physically got sick. Like I really confronted it. And then I got physically sick. And
Oh
I had
wow.
to, you know, like run to the washroom and basically like
Oh,
vomit.
oh, okay.
And that helped me understand the physical process that we go through confronting certain information and how it's not just about the mind, how the body can take in that information. So I think that's why, they dumb things down for the general public. It's just because they don't have things didn't build up slowly. Whereas now there's a lot more out there. And people have been seeing it a lot more in movies. So many movies are geared towards this dystopian, technocratic,
Mhm.
existence where all this crazy technology is being used. So these ideas aren't as foreign to people as they used to be, you know, even back in the 80s.
Yeah. I mean, but it's still a slow process because I mean, even it's funny, even my dad, that he even mentioned 2 times because sometimes I would talk about certain things and he would like, yeah, isn't it like that movie? I didn't even see it, but it was like that movie where you had like a time, you have X amount of time to live if you didn't have these cells or something, and then there was this person who hacked it, and he was able to retrieve like points or whatever so that some people could live longer because they said certain things that was against the regime, therefore their lifespan was literally being reduced. And he's like, yeah, I saw it in a movie, something. And I'm like, my jaw dropped, like, okay, well, yeah. And he's like, yeah, 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 I've seen it, and isn't it like that? And I'm like, yeah, it sounds pretty crazy, but it's kind of one of the same. It's just on a lower dose, but we're kind of, if it doesn't stop, it seems like it's going there. Just because it seemed implausible, we make it as, not possible. But anything is possible with these technology nowadays. Anyway, but yeah, even just my dad bringing that up, I was like, oh, okay, so they already made movies about this. Yeah.
I agree. This one, I'm looking at it as you're talking, and I'm thinking of like Joe Biden, like clone Joe Biden,
Yeah.
makes voice emanate from individuals who do not intend or realize it. Ventriloquist effect also functions for voice recognition. There you go. I think
So,
this is actually like a lot of these puppets, right?
ah, mm-hmm. It's so crazy how they don't even look the same. The previous and this one, I've seen pictures side by side, and it's like, because I personally wasn't even that into politics before, so it's true, I don't know what the previous one looked like. And then it's true, it doesn't even look anything like it. Very few, but
Hmm.
the
But that's
stern.
another concept that, yeah, until people understand, that's another, for another video, like the technology that's been out there regarding cloning, and they did slowly release a lot of that information to the public when they cloned a sheep back in the 50s, but
Mm,
they really pulled that information back out of the public, the general view, because there's a lot of ethical issues, ethical questions, understandably. And so they just kind of pulled all that information. Not much has been released since then, but if they were able to clone a sheep in the 50s, they were able to clone, a human as well. And so the refinement of that process has obviously become more and more sophisticated. And then if they're just looking at like, kind of an empty shell, they're able to use frequencies to basically remote control it.
mm.
So yeah, this is pretty, I'm just gonna slowly, like, let me see, this is 7 pages long. Well, at the bottom here, they have a device for magnetic and electric field shielding, protection of living systems from electromagnetic fields, like a
Oh.
Faraday cage or whatever. So they have sophisticated patents, that could assist people or
Mm.
protect people. Like, let's say if they are, being targeted and they're having these auditory hallucinations through frequency to, being targeted, like it's possible to, I guess the weaponry is battling that, and then I guess different armies would be using certain frequency protection, right? To protect
Yeah,
them
we
against frequency
interesting
targeting.
for sure.
Yeah, and so a lot of the frequency weaponry through the cell phones started happening with the smartphones. It was designed by the military, it's been used, and people's bioelectromagnetic fields have been affected through frequencies from the cell phones. Starting as far back as the 80s and 90s.
Mm.
And I know that in 2015, and this has been confirmed by a lot of people, but by 2015, a lot of people were hit with targeted frequencies in different geographical areas to really try and combat this kind of
Awakening.
progression that was happening. Yeah,
Ah,
exactly. Yeah. And so
yeah.
everyone got hit, and a lot of people just experience a real shift in their thinking and their being, their state of being, really having to deal with really powerful, this kind of psychic warfare going on, picking up on all sorts of things. And I think that was related to, the smartphone technology that was used
Mm.
during that time through frequencies. Um, and yeah,
Wow.
it's been confirmed by other people. And so, um, not to make anyone afraid, but if you're gonna have something, a Bluetooth device in your ear all day, which now Apple put out the patent, and they have, I don't know if you saw it, but Apple put out the patent for their new earpods, and they have sensors. There's like 14 sensors on the inside of the earpod to capture heart rate, to capture all sorts of things. And if there's sensors there, I'm sure they can also be used as transmitters. So transmitting information directly through the ear. What are we looking at? We're looking at stuff like this here,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. And I mean, I didn't even get into the new phones, like you said, the headsets. But for me, I'm so it's so surprising for me that people are onto these new watches that monitor everything, and there are so a lot of people are very excited about it and they buy it for their kids, and I'm just so like, why? What for? And how is that helping your life? And again, introducing new systems, more tracking, or just more ways all of it around you. Now this is skin contact, and it's, you're adding more and more and more, all in the name of what? Technology advancement, because it's this idea of, again, the more technology, we're more smart, we're more evolved. Now this is a thinking, a focus, and loads of people have it, and they just see it as a
Just
watch.
misinformed, like not understanding really, the depths of it. Like you said, just being impressed by the technology, um, being captured by the trend,
Yeah.
you know, um, moving with the masses in terms of what's being introduced, and jumping on board with that because it's, the Joneses, and if they have it, I want it. And they have that technology, I want that technology. They have their remote control grass cutter, I want it too. And so it starts off really naively like that, and then not understanding that when you have a Bluetooth device on you that can transmit information, because Bluetooth doesn't move through the body. But if you have a sensor on you, such as like a watch, where there's like a copper coil or whatever, it's the Bluetooth can then move through the body. So
Ooh.
data like a computer, right, can be transferred through the body. And the electromagnetic field basically it's like a computer, it stores memory. So you can have false memories implanted into the body and
Mhm.
stored by the body. So it's like literally having information, any information that's coming in that you can't, it's not like you read something and you're like, I'm going to accept that, or I'm not going to accept that. It's literally, can come just straight through these devices
Mhm.
into the bioelectro, moving through your nervous system, and then storing itself in your
Oh,
cells, right? So it's this whole other level that people just aren't there yet.
yeah.
They didn't read enough
Mhm.
on how the body works, how computers work,
Mhm.
how information is shared and stored, transmitted. So Bluetooth, these earpods or whatever don't seem like a problem to them.
Mhm.
These Watches don't seem like a problem to them. They don't see what can go wrong.
Go back far, far, far back when we first started using cell phones, and I know that it was talked about, and a lot of people talked about how the danger of having a cell phone too close to your head. And there were studies that came out, and it was this, ooh, but then slowly, actually not long after, because it's such a great tool, that all that information just kind of just got put aside, like, oh, but it's so useful. But when it first came out, everybody knew. But it becomes this everybody know information. You know that it's information, but you just put it under the carpet because but it's useful. Okay, well, we'll deal with it. It's like, sugar tastes good. But it's not good. It's okay. We love it, but therefore you just kind of like put a blind eye onto it. But this blind eye is costing us way more um in terms of our health and everything, and we're going in the direction of human beings. Unfortunately, it's not just a little thing now. It's growing into a monstrous thing. Now we have a whole list of, I don't even know how many is there in this
Yeah,
list.
7 pages long, a lot
Insane.
is yeah, a lot is, being produced. It's all boiling down to the same thing. And, it's basically controlling. Like if you look at, let's say you have a herd of cows and you want to do less and less work, in terms of managing the herd of cows, and you still want to produce as much milk as possible and, harvest as much meat as possible. You start using technology, you're able to, if you can, implant something, or send certain waves at the cows to walk from one end of the pasture to the other without having to go out there and shepherd them, and force them to all go in that direction, then, you're going to do it because you're saving X amount at the end of the day. And this is kind of how the psychopaths look at human populations. They see them as like herds of animals that they're having to herd around and to try to get them to do what they believe needs to be done with the least amount of cost involved and the least amount of force, right? Um, and so it's all about getting into the mind, getting directly into the mind, and trying to get people to um, come up with just simply produce the results themselves by believing in that the thoughts that they're thinking are their own. And it just like streamlines everything, right? If you want everyone to believe a certain thing because you're trying to sell a certain product, and every one morning, you know, a million people wake up and they're thinking, I really need this product, right? And they just go out and buy it and spend their money and give it to this one company, you know, that company is kind of like that's success for them, they accomplished that and they didn't care how they accomplished it as long as everybody went out and bought their product. So this is kind of the mentality of, these different organizations and people that use these technologies. Is very disconnected from anything human. It's very disconnected from the well-being or the human rights of the individual. And because it's unseen, aside from that small little band of frequencies that are, optical, all those other frequencies are unseen. So because all of these are unseen, they kind of just go right under the radar. And like you were saying, why don't people acknowledge it? They just think the technology is fun, but it's because it almost takes a big emergency or a big accident for people to actually say, okay, what is this? What is this that we're coming up against? Because I can't see it. And now I have to go research, so people who have been targeted and have experienced harm from these devices, majority, 80% of them will never even know what hit them or what it was. They'll just come up with another story.
Mm.
But if they were able to gather enough information about it and then come into the right, be able to correlate, like, okay, this happened at this time, this was going on, and they might come into the knowledge of this stuff. And then awareness starts increasing.
But that's where I think information warfare is really at a level unseen, because it's not only what you read. They know now to even just, in terms of video frames per second. I was reading that basically, our eyes can see at 30 frames per second. So anything above that, you can't actually consciously see it, but your subliminal mind or intelligence sees it all. He will take all of that information in, so they know to go under and pass information in your visual field that is undetected to your conscious mind. So that's one angle. So all the subliminal messages gets through, whether you want it or not. You can be the most conscious person, it's going to get through. You can decide what to do with that information, but it's going to go through your visual fields. And now we're going at auditory, right? Through the waves, they're putting it embedded into the music. So I guess the music must be the same thing. You can probably hear at a certain frequency only. So the rest of it, you still perceive it. So that is being studied in the psychology, how your subliminal mind and intelligence perceive. I think it was like 100-fold of information of what your conscious mind is actually able to understand. So you take it all in, and then you're messed up. You don't know why. And now we have this physical contact, as you're saying, right, into your skin. So that transmits information. You have the other ways that are directly, pulsing information if they want to use it as a tool. So you have all these things that are coming
Yeah,
in.
because it's
So
not 100% effective. Like when they did back in the 50s, when they came out with the big cinemas, the big screens, and they had the Coca-Cola and popcorn subliminal
mm,
messaging. So they flashed the screen really quickly with Coca-Cola and popcorn. And you can find these studies, they're out there. It would be imperceptible to the human eye, be too fast.
right.
But when they
Yeah.
slowed it down, they slowed down the frame. It was just an image of Coca-Cola, the logo, and then the popcorn.
Mhm.
And this was legal. It's all this stuff is, a lot of it is legal. That's the crazy part. And so people, not everyone, let's say there's 100 people in the audience,
Mhm.
it wouldn't be 100% effective. It would only affect a small amount of people. So let's say 20% of people would say,
Yeah.
within a few minutes, I'm going to go get some popcorn. I'm going to go get a Coke, right? And we have that in our commercials today. The
Yeah.
reason why they pay so much for the commercials on TV isn't so much the straight up marketing. It's really the subliminal that they get across.
Yeah.
So there's a certain amount of control with that. Again, it's not 100%. But so the more they're like, as they keep on studying this stuff and coming up with better patents, it's about how to become more effective with
Ah.
their technology. Right.
Oh.
So
Yeah.
as you were speaking, I was seeing the progression, to the point where it's like, well, we're just going to beam these frequencies straight into the person's mind or through the devices. And they're just going to think what we want. And it's, 80% effective because they think it's coming from their own thoughts. Even if it's confusing, they're still, it's like, it's in my head, and then they get all into this like state of disorientation, right? What do I want? Is this really me? And
And you don't even, yeah, these people are, it's like being in the city, um, versus being in nature for a long time. You almost use people, everyone says you start hearing yourself, you start calming down, your nervous system calms down. But if you never taste what it's like almost to be you, just not to be bombarded, people don't know what it means. They don't even understand it. So they take this new standard as life. This is how life is, being bombarded. So try to decipher, you're already in a fish in a tank that's so dirty that you never seen a clear day, a clear water. So you don't even know what it is. So how does one person, how do people detect what is being themselves? I don't know. And
100%, 100%. That's the thing. How do they detect it? Did you mention something about the music? Did we look at that?
induces a desired brain state via modification of music files. And then page 3, there are 3 of them also talks about music And the next page talks about another one controls human brain waves by superimposing waves onto audio wave signals.
Ah, yes. Yes,
Right.
yes,
And then the
yes.
next one
Because
after, yeah, again, what we choose to listen in terms of just music, pop music, radio music, whatever you decide to listen to also affects you. So, as innocent as music is, music can be therapeutic, or now today, music can be used as a tool to superimpose ideas, thoughts, or whatever else that they want to put into you, again, against your consent. You're not even, because you can't see it, you can hear it, you're not aware of it, you think you're not aware of it, but it's coming in. So a lot of these, it's just how, and the second last item on the same page, page 3, method of superimposing hidden subliminal messaging into audio and music files. So me as a parent, I would think, it's very, my kids listen to music, it's good for them. No, depends what music it is. So again, all these different
and it's so covert
aspects of our lives, and we
that
think it's so
it's so
innocent.
covert. Yeah, it's so, you don't want parents to start freaking out. Once you realize kind of like that everything has been manipulated to a certain extent, then you're trying to figure out, like for the longest time, I was like, no, it can't be that widespread, no, it can't be that ubiquitous, right? When we're talking about like some of these darker topics, the mind just won't accept to what degree the systems of control will try to implement this. Most people think it's just like, okay, these patents are there, but no one's using them, or these patents are there, but only a small group of people, really evil, diabolical people in a lab are using them. And then it's like, okay, no, these patents are there. And it's actually, these pretty big institutions. And then it's whoever's going to pay the biggest buck to get their hands on these tools. They're going to start using these technologies. You know, it has a lot to do with economics. It has a lot to do with controlling populations, manage population management, right? People are living down here, and then you have all this warfare happening up here where that's going on. And, you know, we have to keep on pushing this stuff out. So I'm really grateful that you've come on to share this, because it is a really big topic to tackle. And we're just sort of like, we're just scratching the surface, really, bringing forth some of the information that we've uncovered, that people can go and check out for themselves. These are legit patents. So, shows who they were invented by, what year. A lot of the information is there to do your own research. Maybe we can bring something forward in the future where we're talking about really reinforcing our, bioenergetic sovereignty, some of the things that we could do, because I know that your lifestyle is geared towards that, and mine as well. I had to start gearing it towards that in 2017. I started looking at all this stuff like, okay, how can we combat some of this stuff?
Really, it's one sentence: get back to nature.
Yeah, 100%. Leave your cell phone at the house, and, leave it in the car and just go out into nature. Right? Like a lot of people just don't even do that. They always have their device on them.
Yeah.
We got so used to it, just like over the course of a decade, all tethered to the cloud, right? Bioenergetically, um, physiologically, psychologically, like, no, we got to tear free. And that's really breaking out of the matrix, is really coming into this knowledge.
Yeah, and I mean, for anybody who are super busy, and I think, pay you the best gift you can give to yourself is a weekend, a weekend or a day in nature. And the contrast is huge. You'll feel the energy right away. It's like, oh, okay, well, get a little taste of what this is, and okay, And everybody feels it. I've had several people who just come and they're not usually, and they're like, oh, I just want to phase out and it just feels good. And there's no more agenda and there's no more thoughts. And it's like, okay, well, this is the beginning. And the more you get
A
tasted that.
recalibration, like you said, of the nervous system, it recalibrates to the natural rhythms. And it's drastic. If you're coming out of the city and you're connected to the cloud and you're constantly, feeding off of the collective hive mind, and your nervous system is in a heightened state of arousal.
Mm.
And your adrenal glands, like everything is going at full blast. People don't realize it until they really disconnect and they put their phone down for like a week. It's huge. But thank you so much for coming on. We can talk more about that and we can put something together. And I really, really appreciate this. We've been wanting to do this for a while, and I think it's time. People are open, more open to this information. It's starting to hit the mainstream. So
Yeah,
yeah.
like I said, I like how you frame it. It's not a fear tool, it's an empowerment tool, knowing what we're capable of doing and knowing what's out there. It's sort of like the hunter. You have your tool, you have your gun, you're ready for what's to come. But you also know you have something to protect yourself with. So it's just a different level of awareness. We've done this before, we can do it again.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, thank you so much. I'm just going to stop the share, and really appreciate you coming on, Jenny. Thank you.